Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to First Principles. Today we've got Jason with us, and we'd be speaking about getting things done, or GTD, and productivity in general. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Jason, for this episode, if you can set the context and introduce yourself for the audience, please.
Sure. My name is Jason Atwood. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Arkus. We're a Salesforce consulting partner. More importantly to that, in the GTD world, I've been a GTD practitioner for going on 20 years now. I'm a GTD certified trainer and do a lot of coaching internally in our company. We can dig into all that as we go.
Okay, perfect. So let's dive in. What is GTD? And I have to ask you a leading question. Why is it special compared to other methods?
Wow, that is a good question. So GTD is getting things short for getting things done, which is a productivity methodology that was written in a book by David Allen in 2001. I picked up the book in 2004, so just a couple years after. And what is so important? I mean, it's based on a couple of pillars of understanding and thought, and we can dig into what those pillars are and how it works. But basically, it's a way to deal with life's stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff out there in life. When we think about the amount of stuff that we have today in our world, like emails and texts and DMs and Slacks and Teams and notifications, right? That the amount that we have today in 2024 and the amount that we had 100 years ago, right, 1924, is just grown by a ton. So we get more and more stuff every day. The technology's brought on more and more stuff. So the GTD methodology is just a way to deal with it. How do you deal with all this stuff, help prioritize it, help get things done, but also feel not stressed about it, right? Not feel like you're letting things go and not living up to your internal or external commitments.
Okay. So what would you say to people who are like, this is going to be too structured, and I'm not that structured. I don't work well in those environments. Is it for them as well, or is it mostly for folks who are disciplined and military types?
I think it's for anybody who just has a lot of things on their plate, right? Some of the principles and the methodologies aren't really groundbreaking. They could be done in a desert, or they could be done, in a computer main room. So like one of them is something called the 2-minute rule,
Hmm.
which is if you think of something that you need to do and you think that it can take under 2 minutes to do, just do it. Right? Don't write it down. Don't capture it. Don't put it into your trusted system. Just get it done. Just go do it. I like to say it's a great way of thinking about your house and like picking up things around your house. You walk around your house, you see something sitting out, you see a wrapper on the floor or something fell over, and you think, oh, I should do that. Well, if you can think that and you have the 2 minutes to do it that moment, just do it.
Right.
It's great for family members or roommates, right? It's like somehow just do the thing as opposed to thinking, oh, I should just go do it. So that has nothing to do with technology. That doesn't have anything to do with structure. That's just like a very nice little simple, what we like to call in the GTD world, these are just habits. They're
Right.
small little habits that we can pick up and we can introduce that help us stay less stressed about things.
Okay. Before we get into the definitions of a trusted system and perhaps the two models, the areas of focus, which is the secondary model that I'm familiar with, and the first model, the main model, uh, maybe talk to us about what is ambient anxiety in the context of GTD, because Alan has mentioned that many times, and to me, it's mostly things that are like big amorphous bubble, and I need to get some things done. I don't know what exactly, and I just live with it. Some people have a high tolerance for it, some people don't. So, what's your understanding of it?
Yeah, so I actually go back to an analogy that's kind of a strange one, but it's the shower analogy, right? If you ask anybody, when do you have the thoughts? When do things pop into your head?
Hmm.
It's generally not when they're sitting in front of their computer or whatever. It's when they have a moment of quiet, a moment of peace, when they're not in front of technology. So I ask people, like, when do you get those thoughts? And then most people say, oh, yeah, right. Either when I'm about to fall asleep, I get oh, I forgot to feed the cat, or I'm in the shower and I'm like, oh, I could create a new business that helps out nonprofits or something like that. So like those things, and it's because we're letting our brains go to that place of serenity, right? Of not being information flowing. Like we spend all of our time with our devices and our phones and our watches and our screens and our multiple screens and our notifications, sort of pounding our brains with lots of information. And that brings stress, right? To be able to process that information, to be able to let your brain have it. What do I have to do? What are the things that are my commitments? What do I need to do with those? And so I think what GTD brings to that sort of stress level is, look, there's all that stuff going around in your head. Here's a way to handle it, right? Here's how to handle those thoughts. And it doesn't matter what they are. Is it feed cat? Is it deal with mom's retirement? Or is it, learn to be a mountain climber and go climb Mount Kilimanjaro? It doesn't matter. All those thoughts, if you use the methodology, if you learn it, can be handled in that way. And so I think that's, that stress level has come because we leave things floating around our heads. And the more things we leave floating around our heads, big things, little things, big commitments, small commitments, the more stressed we are, because our brains are just constantly churning on them, trying to figure out how to deal with them. What do I do about this? How do I handle this? So that stress level comes from us. We're doing it to ourselves. And GTD is just saying, well, here's a way to handle that level of stress, that level of things, so you cannot be worried about them. So you cannot feel like you forgot something. So you can feel like you're not forgetting something.
Okay, just perhaps as like a hook, could you perhaps walk us through your systematization or life pre and post implementation of GTD, just for yourself?
Sure. I mean, it was 20 years ago, so I don't know if I remember all the pieces. Basically, my GTD story is I was a massive procrastinator. I got so bad that it was stopping me from doing anything. I would get to work in a company that hopefully they don't track me down, and I would just sit there all day, kind of like thinking about doing work but not doing it. I'd answer a couple emails, but then I would not do the work I needed to do. I would, maybe spend too much time on a message board or IMing, and I just felt I knew I wasn't doing the things I was supposed to be doing. And I started to really lose sleep about it. I started to feel very bad about it. I was thinking about it constantly. All these things I'm not doing. And so like anybody in 2004, I did what we did in 2004, which I just Googled things, like Google procrastination, help with procrastination, and landed on the book. Someone just popped up in some forum or something saying, hey, here's this book, here's this methodology, here's how to handle it. And so bought the book, actually have the date, I have the Amazon order, got it, read it once, and then sort of went into it, full steam. Fast forward from that way to now, the amount of stuff that's on my plate is probably 100 times the amount that was when I was just a lowly middle manager at a big investment bank to running a company. But in some ways, I'm much, much, much less stressed. I have more stuff on my plate, and I'm much, much less stressed about it because I have a way to handle it, because I have a way and a methodology to go through it. And like any methodology or any type of thing that we do, and any type of habits, you have to keep practicing it. And you told me before the meeting, sometimes people fall off the wagon. Yeah, all the time. Just like if you're a runner and you want to get better at running, or you go to the gym, or you're a skater, you have to keep practicing to keep doing it and to keep getting better and better. So 20 years later, still practicing, still trying, still learning, still, using all the different parts of my system, and still trying to get better at it every day.
Awesome. All right. So give us a mind map then of all the GTD methods. I know you're saying it's one methodology, so I don't know if you want to categorize the different models as different methods, but I'll leave it up to you.
Sure. So there's three different pillars, I guess you could start with, right? There's a pillar that's the one about control. There's the pillar that's the one about focus, and there's the pillar that's the one about planning. I actually think for most conversations, people should stay in the control pillar, because it's the one that if you don't have that, you haven't figured out that, you haven't got that working, then you're going to have a hard time. It's hard to get to the bigger points. And he actually makes this point in the book. It's hard to think about, why am I on this planet, if you're worried, if you're trying to remember to pick up cat food and deal with your mom, right? Yeah. Your brain can't go there, because your brain's trying to juggle the little mini things in your life. It's only when you get to the point where you have kind of gotten all that other stuff out of your brain, you've captured all those open loops, you've dealt with them, and we'll talk about that as part of the methodology, that you can then say, oh, yeah, what do I want to do in 5 years? What are my goals for next year? How do I want to be on this planet, or how do I want to leave it? Who am I? You can only get there if you're not worried about, emptying the dishwasher and filling out your taxes, or all the little mundane stuff that's in our life. So starting with the control side, there's basically this little acronym, and it's called C-Core, which stands for 5 different words, which is capture, clarify, organize. They do review or reflect, and then engage. And it's the methodology, the simple methodology of how to get all this life stuff out of our virtual and real inboxes, and how to process it. It's just sort of just like a little machine of how to process it. So we can go through each one and talk about them.
Yes, sir. Let's do that. So capture, what would be capture? And by the way, inboxes is your email box, your actual mailbox, or your in tray, and everything and anything that data coming towards you. Okay.
Yeah. And I think, that's one of the beautiful things about GTD, and one of the good learnings from it is, one of the things that you learn in GTD is to have as many inboxes as you need, but not any more. And so a lot of it is renegotiating what is an inbox, right? Like, for example, I'm on the X platform and I'm on LinkedIn, but a lot of those places I don't consider inboxes. They're not pulling my attention. I don't make an intentional say I'm going to check my, X messages every day. I don't care. And I kind of make it known to people, those aren't the places I care. Email, Slack, physical, sure, these are real inboxes. So that, your inboxes are your choices. And I think a lot of people struggle and stress a lot, certainly in current world, because they allow too many inboxes, right? If you almost think like of all the notifications you have on your phone, all of them that pop up all throughout the day, or all those badges on your phone, go look at them someday and go, do all those places mean something to me? And are all those places that I actually feel, that I have an agreement with, that I have to do something? If you don't, maybe you should turn it off. So anyway, so let's go back to capture, because capture is very simple. It's, look, you got those things in your head, right? You need to get them out of your head. You need to get all those things. You need to capture them and get them out physically, out to something, to a piece of paper, to a whiteboard, to OmniFocus, to Evernote, to your calendar. It doesn't matter. But all these commitments, and we talk about internal and external commitments, are the things that you need to get out of your head. I think the easiest way for people to understand it is, if you and I said, let's go have lunch in 2 months, or actually this podcast, right? We agreed to do the podcast. We know what to do about that, right? We're very clear. We say, we're have lunch in 2 months. We pick a date, and then we put it on our calendar, right? We know that. That's our trusted system for events. It is the place we put the things that we are committed to as our events. And everybody kind of just understands that and goes with it. But there's this huge missing piece. Where do you capture the stuff that isn't event-based? Where do you capture the stuff that's reoccurring? Where do you capture the stuff that is, I want to go to Bermuda next year. I can't put that necessarily in my calendar because it doesn't make sense. So there's like this missing piece, and GTD is just saying, look, you got your calendar for certain things, and there's great reasons to put it there, but you need to capture all the other stuff as well. So the first step of that is just to get it out of your head, to find your digital or analog inbox and just write it down. Write it on a piece of paper, write it on a to-do list, put it on Google Docs, put it in whatever, but capture that stuff out first and get it out of your head. It's very unnatural for people to do this, because people have been sitting around for, millennium keeping things in their head. And so the idea to get as granular as, take out the trash tomorrow morning, well, I don't have to write that down. I don't have to capture that. But in GTD, it's really about getting everything out of your head. If you have a commitment to do something for somebody else, external, or for yourself, internal, you should capture it and get it out of your head, put it into some system.
Breaking those commitments to somebody else, obviously we can anticipate what the social costs are, but it's interesting that breaking commitments to yourself also have psychological costs. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think it's the hidden piece. And when I teach people about GTD and I train them at the company, I do bring up internal commitments, because I think it's something we don't think about as much, right? No one's holding us accountable for not going to the gym, except for yourself. But you lose sleep at night thinking about that. You wake up in the middle of the night or taking a shower and you go, oh, I really should have done that spin class. Or I really feel bad because I was taking, I wanted to get to the gym today. So, or I wanted to eat better, or I wanted to learn to play the piano, or whatever it is. We make so many commitments to ourselves that aren't externalized. They're nowhere for someone to see. They are internal commitments, but they're just as draining on our psyche as our external. The external make us feel bad. And I talk about procrastination a lot because I think it's something we all can wrap our head around. And when I talk to people about procrastination, I say, I usually ask the question, what is procrastination? And people say, oh, it's not doing something. And they say it's, it's putting something off. It's not doing something. But there's a piece to procrastination that people don't get, which is the feeling of it, right? I'm not doing a lot of things right now. I'm not answering an email. I'm not going for a jog. I'm not preparing dinner, but but I don't feel bad about that because I'm here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So feeling bad about something is the piece that's procrastination. You don't do something like, oh, I didn't, I forgot my mother's birthday, or I didn't pick up a present for, or I didn't get a card for my girlfriend for Valentine's Day. Yeah, part of that's you feel bad, like either they externally do, or I really want to get to the gym today, but I didn't. Oh, I don't feel good about that, right? You feel bad. So the feeling bad is the procrastination side. But if you don't know what all of your commitments are, your external and internal commitments, it's hard to even wrap your head around them. And so most people try to keep them in their head, then they miss them, then they feel bad.
Right.
This is saying, look, okay, great. You're going to have a lot of commitments, but you need to at least externalize them, because then if they're in front of you, you can at least decide what you want to do with them. So that kind of actually leads us to the next piece.
Yes, yes. So just one point before we get to the second part of C core is we can say no to a lot of things as well within a more sort of self-assured way if we have a full inventory, which I think would be the whole point of it, because people are even afraid to acknowledge the inventory. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on that. But yes, what do you have to say about that as well as the clarify step?
I totally agree. And if you can't, it's easier to say no. I mean, GTD gives you the power to say no, because I can see all the things that are in my world. And then when the next thing comes in, I can say, oh, where does this fit with all these other 100 commitments that I have, or 50 or 1,000, whatever.
Right.
And I can easily go, you know what? It's not as important as that. I can't commit to that. It also makes you think. GTD helps you think in time. I think, so when you think about, if I look at my system and I go, look, my plate's pretty full right now. If I were to add this thing in, what would I take off this plate? Would I take something off? Most people don't understand how committed they are to anything. And when you start to really get into GTD, you realize that everything you do is a real big commitment. Right. And when you take on something new, you really have to make room for something else. And you might have to not do something else. I'll give you an example. I had a colleague at work come to me, and we were doing some GTD coaching. And he said, oh, we're buying a house. And I said, oh, that's a lot. He's like, oh yeah, you have to buy the house and whatever. And I said, no. You just signed up for hundreds of projects. You literally just signed up to own a piece of property, to own a house is to take on hundreds of projects that you're gonna have to do throughout the year. And I started listing them off, and he's like, oh wow, oh. It's like there's just so much. So not that I don't want people to not own homes, but like there's a massive amount that we don't think about. But when you get great at GTD, you start to see it, and you start to break it down. It's like the Matrix. You start to look at a house to own, and you're like, okay, roof, top, soil, garbage, recycling. And you think these are all projects that I'm going to have to do. These are all new commitments that I just took on. I took on hundreds of commitments by owning a house. Having a child, I would say thousands of commitments. Running a company, maybe millions, whatever. But like these are all huge commitments that we take on. So the next piece, is the clarify piece. So you go from capturing, and that the reason he broke them out, and again, as I studied this for 20 years, it's because they're kind of like they're a 1-2 punch. I mean, you get really good at GTD, and you of course do this very quickly. But in the original, it's like, look, you don't have to think about all those things. Just get them out of your head. Write down the word mom. Write down cat food, write down retirement, write down Bermuda, write down running, right? Because it's sometimes just what's the words that are in a head. Right. So the second piece is like, okay, you've written them all down. Now deal with them. Now clarify. What are these things? Because you've sometimes they come out great, right? I want to go to Bermuda next year for a vacation. Great, you've kind of already done that. You've clarified what it meant to you. But sometimes you just don't know. Mom, oh, that meant mom. Well, what did I mean by mom? And then you go, oh, well, I'm concerned about my mother's retirement. Oh, okay. So there's like, you got to clarify what that means to you. So, and in GTD, you kind of like change what you wrote down, right? You're moving it to a different system because you're not just writing it down as mom anymore. You might write mom's retirement. And then you're saying, well, is this something I'm committed to, right? Because sometimes I write down a lot of things and I come back to it. I'm like, nope, not committed to that. That's fine. That can go into the someday maybe list, or I just don't care about it. I can delete it. but you're clarifying, is this, what does this mean to me? Is this something, is it bigger than a bread box? Is this something that's part of a project or something that I want to do? Can I defer this? Can I do it in under 2 minutes? So clarifying is just like asking a lot of questions to help you understand, and it's like 5 or 6 questions to help you understand what this thing is. Again, takes a lot of mental energy, especially if you're dealing with, after capturing hundreds of things on your head, you then have to clarify what they are. Once you get really good at GTD, you're not doing hundreds and hundreds of things because you've clarified and captured a lot. But still, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll find my inbox full of like 5 or 6 things that I captured the night before. I'll be watching TV, or I'll be, doing a mind sweep, and I'll just write down a bunch of stuff. And next morning in my inbox is like, ooh, 5 or 6 things. Sometimes they're like, oh, that's stupid. Sometimes they're like, ooh, I better do that right now. And sometimes it's like, ooh, I want to think about that. That's something bigger. So clarifying, just saying, what is this? What does it mean to me? Is it part of a project? Can I do it under 2 minutes? Or sorry, is there a next action I can do if I'm something? Can I delete it? Maybe I don't need it. Can I defer to some other time that I don't want to do it? And then if I'm really committed to this, if this is something that I'm taking on in a kind of a project sort of way, then you're saying, okay, what is the very next action? What's the next thing to do to get this thing from point A to point B? And that's the clarifying step. It's hard. Capturing is kind of easy because you just say write everything down out of your head, but clarifying gets a little bit more difficult because you're really having to think through your stuff.
How difficult do you find this as a coach? The last question you asked, what's the very next action? Because with my colleagues, and when I got very excited about GTD, this really makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does, but it's just a way of starting to think. So the way I break it down for people is to say, what you're trying to get down to is a physical and visible action, right? That you can do in under 20 minutes. That way it makes it easier for people. Because obviously if you say, I'm going to write a book on productivity and the next action is write book, I mean, I can't do that. But if the next action is, spend 20 minutes writing a quick outline on a piece of paper, oh, I can do that. Right. Or, look up 20 other books that have already been written, right? I can do that. So giving it a little bit of a time, 20 minutes seems like the right amount of time. Like saying it's a physical, visible, so someone else could watch you do it. Physical, you're doing it. Someone else could see it and go, ooh, that's happening. And then just in that 20-minute thing helps people kind of break things down. But the process you usually go through is to say, can I do that next thing, right? Because is it the next actual physical one? The one I love is the plumber one. So I'll talk to someone and I'll look through the list and they'll say, okay, what's this? Like it says, bathroom sink, right? There's what you captured. What does that mean? They go, oh, there's a link in it, or there's a leak in the next action, or a leak in the bathroom sink. And I'm like, okay, so the project is fix bathroom sink leak. Oh yeah, fine, we can do that. I said, what's the next action? And it's like, fix it. I'm like, okay, are you fixing it? No, no, I can't do that. I'm like, okay, so who's fixing it? And then it's like, oh, well, it's plumber, so get plumber to fix it. Well, which plumber? Oh, I don't know who the plumber is. Okay, well, where are you going to find the plumber? And then it's like, they go, well, I could research. I'm like, okay, well, what else? Do you know anybody who knows a plumber? I was like, oh yeah, my neighbor has a plumber that just did their thing. I should check with them. I'm like, okay, how are you going to check with them? Are you going to send them a note? Are you going to email them? Are you going to text them? How's the physical? It's like, oh, I could probably just text them and say, hey, what's the name of the number of the plumber you use? And I'm like, boom, you just got there. That's the very next physical action you can do. And look, it's in the 2-minute rule. Take out your phone right now and text that person and say, hey, can you give me the name of the plumber you use for your bathroom remodel? Right. So you get from this amorphous thing, right, that had a lot of like stuff in it, which we could talk about brainstorming and mind mapping. And there's a lot of stuff you can do in there to break that down. But just going down to what's the next thing, because they would usually say, call plumber. And you're like, okay, where's the phone number? Do you have it? Can you call them? And they'd be like, no, I don't have it. I don't even know which one it is. So getting them to sort of think through that process and get down to the next one, super impactful. Once people get it and they get on board with that, then they can do it from almost anything, whether it's going out to dinner, whether it's fixing a phone, or whether it's like writing a book, right? It's one big thing, but you got to get to the very next physical thing you can do. And you don't need every single step in along the way. And that GTD teaches you that, is you don't have to be worried about, there's 100 steps to get between here and getting it fixed. Just do the next one. Right. You don't need to think, you don't have to map out all 100. because they're going to change. So
Yeah.
just map out the very next one.
Yeah, that's a more sort of agile approach in agile project management as well. There
So,
are certain,
yeah, it was agile before agile, right?
Yeah.
I mean, GTD's been around in some ways a little bit longer than agile, but yes, it is sort of that like, hey, we're just gonna get to the next piece. We don't have to know, we don't have to do the 600 steps. You don't have to do waterfall in this project. I do find people who are very technically savvy and in project management generally gravitate to GTD very easily. But I've also seen a lot of creative people do it because it gives them a structure to do things that they feel are unstructured. So anyway.
Yeah, artists do it, and I was once looking because I wanted to get into product management, and then the first book which was recommended was Getting Things Done by David Allen. I was like, okay, fine, this is great. All right, reflect. So that's the third step in this model, right?
Oh, one more. You had organize. We skipped
organize.
Yeah, C-core. So organize is the next one. Again, we've been kind of talking about organizing. It just means put it somewhere. Okay. Organize means just put that thing somewhere. So you capture something, you clarify what it means. Now put it somewhere. Organize means make sure it's in your trusted system. Is it in your filing cabinet? Is it in your task list? Is it in your calendar? It's just saying, hey, figure out where it needs to go. Is it in your Evernote? Is it in whatever? Figure out where you need to go with it and organize it and put it there. Again, capture, clarify, and organize really become very quick. You kind of do them all together. But it is that step to say, okay, now that you've done that, now that you've clarified what this meant to you, now put it in the right place. And that's where we started this conversation, which was, look, if it's a lunch with you in 3 weeks, the organize is put in the calendar. If it's a task I need to do, then it put it into my task-based system, right? For me, that's OmniFocus. Or if it's, hey, there's a restaurant I want to go to in Italy. The next time I'm in Italy, maybe I throw it into my Evernote. That's restaurants I want to do someday. Or if it's some bucket list item, then maybe I'm gonna throw it into a note. So it's just to put it in the right place. The key there is that most people don't have those other places. Most people only have calendars. They do not have good, sufficient task management systems that can capture their projects and can capture their tasks. And that's where I think most people fall off the wagon, is like they either start to use calendar for everything, which is not good, or they just don't know where to put it. So they put it on stickies, they put it in these places that are just, start to be not scalable solutions, especially with the amount of work that we need to do nowadays. So having a great task management system, I think is just part of this now. And I don't know how people can survive in today's modern knowledge-based, knowledge worker world without a really good one. Not just an okay one, a really good one. It can't be just basics anymore. I mean, I used to survive with a Palm Pilot, right? I had a Palm Pilot and the Palm Pilot task list. Fine for then, could not survive now without it, with something that simple, without, a lot of other feature sets. So that's organize, and then you get to review.
Right. So just some more points on organize here. Could you talk about the difference between a task which needs to be done on a particular day, but not at a particular time, and tasks that need to be done ASAP? Because I struggle with that.
Sure. So that's actually, it's the one thing, and I've been interviewed by David Allen. I've talked to him a couple of times. I don't think I've ever told him that this is the one thing I disagree with him about. But in the methodology, he says, look, if there's tasks that need to be done on the day, but not at a specific time, then they should go in the calendar, right, on that day. So if it's like, oh, I need to call my accountant on the Friday before I do my taxes, he says, put it in the calendar on that day. Right. I disagree with that completely. Tasks should not go into calendars. Calendars need to be hard landscapes. They need to be events. They are a location. They have start and end dates. Because a good task management system now can tell you on the day when you need to talk to them. A good task management system now can float from day to day if it's something that doesn't actually need to happen that day, but just needs to happen when you have the next action. So our task management systems are so much better. We don't need to muddy the calendar, and the calendar doesn't have the ability to move things around, whereas task management systems can automatically do that for you. So I would highly say, so if there's something that needs to be done, look, on a day, then you have a task management system that'll say this is the day it needs to be done, and you can put the time. You could put it at midnight if you want it to be done all day. You could put it at 5 p.m. if it actually had to be done by 5. But more often than that, you're basically probably renegotiating a lot of tasks and a lot of stuff in your day. You're looking at your task and you're going, hey, I wanted to do that today. And maybe I could knock that off, but I can't do that today. And if you use a good GTD system, you can look at it and go, okay, I can do that tomorrow, and just move it to tomorrow and renegotiate your own commitment, and still kind of have it in, as something you need to do. And then there's a certain time you look at that task, and this happens to me, I don't know, 5-6 times a day, that I look at the task and I'm like, no, I need to do that today because the deadline for that is coming up, or I need for us to move from here to there. That task needs to be done. Sometimes I go, I've been moving that task for 3 weeks. I need to renegotiate the commitment. Something about it is not making me do it. Is it something I thought I wanted to do? Is it something I thought was cool? Or is it something I should just renegotiate, maybe put on hold or take the date off of it? So it's just someday maybe. So definitely a way to kind of look at that. It's about how you handle your tasks though, and how you think about them. I think people get overly concerned about due dates, because your human brain, when you scan a list of 20 things, and I think you should keep things in around lists of 20, you can clearly tell what's the one that you have to do because you have to do it for that day, wish your mom happy birthday, and the one that you said you're going to do today, but actually doesn't need to be done today, and we can do it tomorrow, right? Start laundry. Actually, I could start my laundry tomorrow. Let's just move it to tomorrow. So
Right. So in a decent system, I mean, I use TickTick because it's cheap. So there, if it's like a task that needs to be done on a particular day, I just put a date on it. And if it doesn't, so I just, it's in a separate list. Just before Reflect as well, could you talk about the someday maybe list in some detail, and the projects list, and how do projects differ from tasks in this system? Because it's a very broad definition of what a project is.
Yeah, and this I think is one of the places that people get caught up a lot, is because a project feels like building the Empire State Building was a project. But if you just break anything down to something that takes, the GTD terminology, it's just something that takes more than one or two actions to do, right? That you can't just do automatically, or can't be done with one thing. So, when I tell people your vacation is a project, they're like, what do you mean my vacation is a project? Well, you can't go on vacation. That's not a thing. You can pack your bags, task. You can you can call the Uber, task. You can book the flights, task. You can, book the hotel, task. Those are the tasks that get you. It's only when you've done all those 10 things and sitting on the beach that you're now on vacation. So projects are just bigger things. And they can be as small as, things that are like one-off tasks, like empty dishwasher. Sure, that's a one-off. You could just throw that onto a little one-off list. But basically everything else has more than one thing to do, right? You do this podcast. This podcast probably has 10, 15 things to do between scheduling it, finding the guests, doing it, sending out the link, getting the recording, doing the thing, changing it out. Like, it's probably 15 to 20 things that once you do all 15, then, do podcasts gets done. So tasks, think of those small one-off physical visible actions. Projects, things that aren't really physical or visible, but they're the end result of a lot of tasks underneath them. So, a lot of people use the projects as different things. I have a project, for example, for my daughter. Like, what? She's a project? I'm like, well, she is, but like, I have a commitment to her. She's my daughter. She has a lot of next actions and waiting for us, so she's a project. No, it's not get her done, but it is somewhere where I can park a lot of, things that I, tasks that I might need to do. I might need to order her some books for school, or she might owe me a receipt from the visit to the hospital or whatever. I do them for my employees, for every one of my direct reports. I have a project because I have a lot of next actions. So sometimes it's just a place to place things. But then there's a lot of projects that are like great repeating projects that you have to do, like get your license renewed, or get your car, registered, or order new things for your office every month. Like, there's a lot of repeating projects. I think that's where a good project management system does repeating projects well, and a bad one doesn't. So repeating, because so much of our life is repeating, and so much of my commitments are things that have to be done on a kind of repeating cycle. If I can set them up to go over and over again and not ever think about them again, it just takes a lot off my plate and allows me to do order of magnitude more than most people.
Perfect. Okay. So Reflect. Now that okay, this is the right one. Yes, Reflect. What is Reflect?
So when I read it, it was review. He's changed it. So, I think he's read the book twice now. It is now Reflect. I kind of liked review because review really fit into weekly review, but reflect is more of, okay, so you've captured and clarified and organized everything. Now, this is a time where you need to look at that stuff. The basics of it is, if I captured, clarified, and organized all these tasks, but then never opened up my task manager, right? It would be useless.
Yeah.
Just like your calendar is useless if you don't look at it.
Yeah.
And I usually start off by asking people, how many times a day do you look at your calendar? Most people look at their calendar between 5 and 10 times a day. Some people look more. And then I once I did a seminar and I said, all right, close your eyes, and I'm going to, and for the next month, I'm going to have you will not be able to look at your calendar. You'll never be able to look at it all month long for the entire month. And I said, okay, where's everybody's stress level? And everybody's like, oh, I'm very stressed. I'm like, why is that? Why are you stressed? It's, and they're like, well, because it has all these things on it that I don't know, and I have to review and I have to look at it. I'm like, aha, that's right. But the secret is you have a task list and a project list you have to review just as often. The exact same. You should be looking at your calendar and your task management system the same amount of times, right? You wake up in the morning, you look at see what's on your calendar, your hard landscape. You also look at your tasks to see what's ahead of you. And you can't just do that, you can't just do that the same amount every time. You need to take different types of reflection or reviews. So the one that I think people are pretty good at is the daily one, right? Most people, they're going to bed or first thing in the morning, they look at their calendar and they go, oh, what's on my plate today? Most people, right? If you're really good, you look the night before and you go, okay, what's the first meeting? Do I need to get ready for it? Blah, blah, blah. You look at your next calendar, maybe you look a day or two ahead. That's probably people think they're very productive if they do that. That's great. So you should be doing a daily review. In your daily review, you should also look at your task list. What tasks are outstanding that I could have done, whatever, and let me and maybe move them or renegotiate them as I needed. Then there's this thing called the weekly review. The weekly review is the cornerstone of GTD, which is that once a week, you take some time, an hour, 2 hours, generally at the end of the week. I do tell people end of the week is better. You want to do it in a quieter time. And you kind of look at things bigger picture. You don't just look 1 day, 2 day. You look at all your projects. You look at all your next actions. You look at your calendar a couple weeks in the past. You go a couple weeks in the future. You look at your lists. So like there's a whole process to it. But you're reviewing things more agnostically and bigger picture. And again, the time frame is more of like 3 weeks back, 3 weeks forward sort of thing. But then there's another layer on top of that, which is you want to look at other things like your goals for the year or your ambition, or you want to look at those not weekly, be too much, right? Don't want to look at my bucket list every week. That'd be weird. But what if I looked at my bucket list once a year? Or what if I looked at my, my why am I on this planet once every couple of years? People have, I think the biggest reflection everybody knows about is like the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
What's the midlife crisis? Well, when you look at your world and you go, why am I here? Like you're doing a reflection, you're doing a review. You're like, you're doing a why am I on this planet review? So the reflect and review is really saying for different types of parts of your life, you need to take a different sort of cadence to when you look at those things. So your day-to-day life, you need to be looking at daily. Your week to week, month life, you need to be looking at weekly. And your year to 5 year life, you probably look at quarterly or yearly. You review those outcomes, you think about them, you renegotiate the commitments, but you don't look at all at the same frequency. And I think that's the big lesson that people I know who get GTD, they realize you don't look at your task list for today and your bucket list for your life on the same frequency. That doesn't make sense.
Yes. Okay. So the weekly review could be a weekly plus like half yearly or weekly plus yearly review, but it's the same fundamental.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who do a yearly review. That's like their weekly review, but in bigger picture. And the weekly review just gets you at least to take a view of your surroundings and what's on your plate in a bigger picture. And if people do that and they get into that habit, it's just super impactful. Because if you can take an hour or two of your life and just to see what's on my plate, big, and reorganize and give yourself some time to think about it and to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, or this is not what I'm going to do. What are the projects I have that have no next action? What are the projects that I'm not going to do, or I need to renegotiate, or what is that thing that's coming up in 3 weeks? Again, if people would do capturing would be great. 2-minute rule would be great. But if everybody would look at their calendar 3 weeks in the past and 3 weeks in the future, every single week, I mean, we would create so much better productivity. You just do that because you find stuff every single time. You go back 3 weeks, you find that meeting you had that had the next action that no one followed up on you. So you send them the email. 3 weeks forward, you find your vacation coming up. So you can start planning for it. You find, oh, the holidays. If you go far enough, you're like, oh, Thanksgiving's coming, right? What do we do? Like you always find something in there in your hard landscapes that you can prepare for. And the more you prepare for it, the better you're going to be able to do it. So
Wow.
that's
Okay.
really fun. Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about renegotiating in this context over here?
Sure. And again, that's the thing about internal versus external, right? You're renegotiating internally versus externally. For internal, it's about giving yourself a break, right? It's about saying, hey, look, I've got a lot of things on my plate. It's okay for me to not do this thing. There was a time when I did a lot of races, a lot of running and a lot of running races. And the last couple of years, I had a lot more stuff put on my plate. And I literally had to make a choice. I'm like, I can either focus on this or I can continue to do these races. And I had to renegotiate the commitment and say, I'm not going to do races for a couple of years. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to focus my attention on these other bigger issues because I have to, because I know I can't do it all. Yeah. So internal stuff is something you have to, but working out, I work out every day. That's not a commitment that I let go of. So I put that as like, that's going to happen every day. Sleeping, I put a high priority on. So I'll give up time with friends to sleep, right? But I know that that's super important. So you have to renegotiate that internally. There's a couple things that, you can do about that. If you want to get your better habits internally to happen, you can externalize them. So make somebody else know, join a gym, join a running group, whatever. So other people know about your commitments. It feels like you're more committed to them if you do that.
Right.
Then externally, I think the easiest way is to renegotiate an external commitment is to know all your external commitments, right? I actually use numbers in my life. I'm a data-driven guy. So in my system, part of my weekly review is I look at my active projects, the number of active projects I have. And I've learned over 15 years that somewhere between 30 and 50 is my stress levels. If I have 30 to 50 active projects, that's about where I can maintain good. Go under 30, I'm bored. Over 50, I'm stressed.
Right.
So I use that as my way to gauge. But what that does is it gives me some nice guide rails for if I look at the end of the week or during my week review and I have 57, I literally have to say to myself, dude, you need to get under 50. What are you going to do? Which one of these things are you going to drop? Which one are you going to defer? Which one are you going to renegotiate? Which ones aren't important?
Or delegate.
Or delegate. Yeah. And you go through that and you're like, okay, all right, well, I really want to do that next Saturday, but this thing is more important. And if you can look at, 50 things in a list, you go, and I have them broken into folders, but I can go, you know what? Yeah, I'm not that thing I need to let go of.
Right.
Or let's not do that this week. Let's do that next week. And I'll just defer it out, push it out a couple weeks and come back to it. Because I've given myself the ability to say, look, you have this number, you've got to stay under that number. And it helps me renegotiate. If your number's 100, then you have 120, you get to renegotiate down. So it gives me the permission to renegotiate those things. And then you just go to the person, you say, hey, look, I know I made that commitment, that blah, 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 but can we can we do it another time? But it's only through knowing what's on your list and what's coming up, part of that weekly review thing, that you see how much is on your plate. Right. And if people really knew how much they were committed to, if they really did, oh my goodness, they would renegotiate commitments all the time.
Yeah. Or be careful about making them as well. Like once you get into a habit.
Yeah. I have 50 things on my plate. You're putting on 51, probably more than one. Again, take on the house. You're getting 100.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, maybe you have to give up golf. Like literally, I play golf every weekend for 3 hours. Well, you now own a house.
Yeah.
You don't have that extra 6 hours. You're not going to be washing and mowing and painting or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Or sometimes, you can start a new project till it, you finish it off till it graduates to like an area where it kind of takes care of itself, or you need to just put in some energy. So the golf can start after a year and a half, but till then, the remodeling this and that and the taxes, I need to understand that thing needs to be given up, which brings me to values and hierarchy of values. For me, GTD has been very helpful in figuring out what I really value and what is like priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And I've become very strict with that. So it becomes easy to give up in quotations because, you know that it's not a higher value than something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's much easier to do that, prioritize, view, whatever, if you have it in front of you. It's hard to do it in your head.
Yeah.
Right. I'd love you to think of a list of 50 things and keep the list in 50 in your head. You know you can't do it, right? It's very hard for us to have a list and to kind of sort them and to prioritize them. But you put them in front of you, put them in a spreadsheet, put them in a task system, put them up on a whiteboard. It's easy, right? It's like, okay, well, I can. So even that, to get people to understand that, you keeping in your head, you're never gonna be able to prioritize it. You're gonna forget it. I mean, you can only keep 3 or 4 things in your head at a time. So getting it out and putting it in front of you, just it feels better, and then it allows you to deal with it and to kind of say, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I'm not going to do.
And then the last step here is engage, which I suppose is engaged in a proper free-flowing state while you're doing the work and you're not getting badgered by, your other commitments in your head.
Yeah, and it's funny because the comment I get is, well, wow, getting things done, but you're like, you have 4 steps to get there before you get to doing, because it used to be doing, engaging, sure. And it's really because you've done all the other work, right? There's this methodology. Part of the methodology is like, you do all this other stuff, so you've set yourself up, so now you can just go punch the clock, right? Okay, call mom about whatever, fix this today. Yeah, I've got all these very clearly written, verbal, physical next actions. So let's go, right? I got a list. Let's click through. Let's start doing it. The only thing that I think GTD, not the only thing, but one of the things that I think that GTD brings that's a great way of looking at it is the 4 criteria for doing work, right? And you have these 4 criteria. The first one is context. So when you're looking at your list, so you've done all the other work, you're now looking at your list of 20 to 30 things. Now you go, and again, some of these systems are better at this than others, but like you go and you go, okay, now 1, context. Context is saying, who are you around and what tools do you have available to you? Do you have internet? Do you have a computer? Are you on your laptop? Are you on your phone? Are you out running? Are you on a plane? Are you with your friend or your significant other? Your context of what you do next matters. So if I'm sitting here, computer, full internet, and whatever, okay, the context open up. If I'm in an airport waiting for about 5 minutes, waiting to board the plane, okay, context is much less, right? I don't have the tools and technology. So that's 1. The second is time, right? And I gave it away. If I'm sitting here with the computer and all this, but I have 4 minutes before the next meeting, I'm going to pick to do something very different than if I have 3 hours before the next meeting. The amount of time I have before that hard landscape it matters. So again, in an airport, I'm sitting in an airport with my iPhone and I got 3 hours versus it's boarding in 10 minutes. You're going to pick a different thing to do based on your context, then your time. And then the next thing GTD teaches you is your energy. Yeah. And you want to think about physical and mental energy. How much physical and mental energy do you have? Because when you look at that list of 20 or 30 things in your task list that you got to do, you can quickly scan through them and go, oh, well, I can't do that because I only got 5 minutes. I can't do that, whatever. And I don't want to do that because I'm worn out. But that one I can do because it's easy and it's 5 minutes and it'll just go. Yeah. And then you've actually done the 5th one, which is prioritize, because you just did it, right? You just filtered down and said, well, I got 5 minutes before an airplane and I got my phone. So let me call mom and see what she's doing this weekend, or I have to check in with her, right? It's quick. It's easy. You know what it is versus it's Monday morning. Someone just canceled a 4-hour meeting. I've got 4 hours. I got a big cup of coffee. Maybe I'm going to start on that coding project, or I'm going to start writing a user story. I'm going to start doing something big because I've got a lot of energy. I've got 4 hours and I can take something chunky. You can look at your list and you can go, oh, that's a chunky thing. Let's dig into that. And then you prioritize what the best thing to do. And that's, so you go with context and you go by time and you go by energy, mental and physical, and then you prioritize. And it's easy to prioritize if you filter those things out.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's energy plus mood, because I tend to have moods for different kind of things. So I'm going to go to those lists. Now, We've got the other end of the spectrum as well, the perspective, the areas of focus model. Now, I know we are getting very close to the end of the episode, but could you give us like a, big picture view of the big picture of areas of focus?
Yeah, so there's the areas of focus. There's the two other pieces. We won't talk about the planning piece because we can leave that for another episode.
Hmm.
The areas of focus is GTD's or David Allen's way of kind of, and it used to be based on like a plane, like runway going up, but it is the methodology that it takes the general tasking of things and says, look, you can't focus on the big things until you know what the runway is, right? You can't fly high unless you can get off the runway. So really this whole minutia around tasks and next actions and projects is really saying these are the lower level things that if you can get these under control, if you can understand them, if you can feel good about them, then you can start moving up those areas of focus. And so you move up the focus from going from tasks to projects to goals to principle, no, to vision, to principle, like you're going up and up and up. And it's really saying, don't look at it from why am I on this planet? Why am I buying cat food? Look, if I can make sure I get the cat food stuff done, then it allows me to go up and look at the bigger things and really get into them. And I would say it took me probably 10 years before they even became part of my system. Yes, eventually my roles and responsibilities, like eventually I started thinking about this, but it took a good 10 years because so much is happening on the low level and there's so much, there's just so much going on down there that until I could really master handling my projects and handling my tasks and keeping all those things going, it didn't even make sense for me to think about why I'm on this planet or what my goals and ambitions are, or, where I'm going to spend, or where I'm going to spend the next 5 years. And that's really what it's sort of saying is like, you start to look, because tasks are really immediate. Projects are supposed to be in the 1 year period. And then it goes to like the 5 year period and then the sort of 10 year. And then obviously like purpose and principles is like you being on this planet. It's interesting to do this you can do this not only as a person, but you can also use this methodology for businesses.
Yeah.
And take it and apply it to a business or apply it to a group or apply it to something that product that you're doing. So it's a very cool way of kind of going up, down, or down, up on why something exists. And you can start it from either way. What GTD and what David Allen is saying, and I agree with him, is it's hard really to get to those big things if you're stressed about your inbox, about your email, and about Slack. Yeah. It's hard to think about, my 4-year ambition to become the CEO of Arkus when I'm literally trying to put out fires, But once I can get those things under control, once I can get a sense of them, once I can get into a methodology where I'm not stressed about my day-to-day, then okay, I'll take some time now to do it. And so actually at the end of the weekly review, the 3 steps are get current, get creative, get clear, get current, get creative. And the get creative is the piece, like once you go through your weekly review, there's usually this moment of like, oh, I'm in control of my universe. I'm feeling good. Like, oh yeah, so let's do something that is creative. That's when it's a great time to take a pen and pad, paper, or a whiteboard, go for a walk, and just let yourself go. And then more stuff's going to come up and you're going to need to capture more stuff, but that's okay. Yeah. But you'll notice that the stuff you capture is not, milk, cat, dog, mom. It's much more, bigger stuff. It is bigger picture stuff. It's like, you'll be thinking like Rome. Like, well, what's Rome mean? Oh, I really want to go to Rome someday, right? You'll get to start these bigger things. And It's cool because then you capture those and you'll push them through the system, and then they end up in some list and someday maybe list or some places I want to visit that you'll come back to. But it took me a long time to get there.
Okay, so just before we get to the parting thoughts, I do want to ask you about one particular distinction. Areas and purpose and principles don't really end unless, of course, you actively end them. And then generally projects and goals and visions, they have an end date. Is this a useful distinction for you? Or because I get confused for sure.
Yeah, I think of projects as stuff that just, they do get done, but projects can also be things that are, I use the example of like, I have some projects that are around people.
Right.
Now, I do that just because of my system to allow me to have a place to capture them. is there an end to raising my daughter? Probably not.
Hmm.
But so some of it's just a way to have a place to come back to it. It also makes it so in my weekly review, I look at that and I go, are there any next actions for that? Is there waiting for anything from her? So I think you can look at it as like they need to get done, but you can also look at them as placeholders and pieces like that. I think there's actually there's a new book by Mike Williams. I forget the name of it, but he took a new spin on the roles. And what I really liked about it was you have different roles throughout your life, and you have ones that are past roles, you have ones that are current roles, you ones that have emerging roles. And to look, and it took me a second. I went back. It's like, oh, wow, that's really cool to think like I was a student. I was, right? I was a student, or I was a, like even to think like when I was doing a lot of races, I was a runner. Maybe I'm not a runner anymore. And then what are the emerging roles? What are the ones, and there's temporary. What are the temporary roles? What are things you're going through right now that you're doing, but they're just temporary. You're going to move beyond them. And so like thinking of that, I think really is a great way, again, big picture stuff, but it's a great way to think about where you are in your life. And to kind of map out, I suggest everybody give this a shot. Go think of all your roles. Like one of my current roles is parent. That's a current role. That's going to go on. You know what? In 10 years, maybe I have grandparent as a role. I don't know. Here's hoping. But like there's these things that are coming up, and then there's roles that you have, like student, that you go through and then you're done. That was a role that I had, and now I have different roles. So interesting way to kind of wrap it around into where you are in your life, and it is ever changing and ever going. So
I'd love to do an episode with you, perhaps a month out, about GTD project planning, because I think this can get a lot of things in there if you're up to it. I won't take an online commitment from you, but I'll do that offline. Okay, finally, parting thoughts. If somebody, apart from reading the books and trying to do it themselves, if they want help, so what do they do, and do you still coach?
I coach, but only internally to my company. I don't take on outside coaching.
Okay.
I think the best thing to do, again, you have to figure out your learning style, right? I tell this to everybody. Like some people are video people, some people are reading people, some people are audiobook people, some people are podcast people, some people are join a study group people. Figure out which one satisfies you, and then go find that source, right? There are some great podcasts out there. I'm a big audio video person, so I like to listen to stuff. I listened to all of his books. I mean, I read them all, but then listened to them all. I then went into the podcast, and there's a bunch of really good podcasts out there. And just go into that content. That was the content that I like. I like audio and video. There's great video, talks on this. There's tons by David Allen, a couple of the good TED Talk ones. So just figure out what you like. Once you get into it and start practicing it, it is very helpful to find people who are doing it. So there's LinkedIn groups, there's, I'm sure there's Reddit groups, I'm sure there's Facebook groups, whatever. If you're into that, if you're into the social aspect of it, then go find the social place to share and share alike. The tips I will tell you, that there's a double-edged tip, which is two ways, which is one, do reward yourself by trying out something new with something shiny. So some people like to buy physical things, some people like digital things. It's okay to be like, look, I'm gonna take on this new GTD thing, and I'm gonna buy a subscription to Todoist, or a subscription to OmniFocus, or I'm going to buy a Mac Sparky, like how to get started with Omni with whatever. I'm gonna buy something physically that gives me a little oomph on it. That's okay. Don't get caught in the trap of always trying to find the next best thing. That is constantly evolving, that you're constantly jumping from system to system to system.
Right.
That just creates a lot of change, and change for no sake. And I think a lot of people I think fall off. They're constantly trying to find the next tool, the next cool tool. I'm going to use Nirvana, then I'm going to use this, then I'm going to use, and I tried this out for 2 days. But if you're spending all of your time evaluating software or systems, you're never going to be able to get to know the actual methodology that you're trying to embark on. So I do say reward yourself with something new. If it's a new Filofax or a new phone or a new piece of software or a new, I'm looking at my physical inbox over here. You want to do that to get into it. but then don't constantly change it. Like stick with that for a while until you really get the methodology down. Again, there's so many great resources out there. I couldn't even name them all, but hearing how other people do it, hearing what other people use is very important. I get that through podcasts and videos. So
Yeah, great fan of podcasts as well. That's why I have one. I do
there you
thank
go.
you. I thank you a lot, Jason, for this particular episodes. Is there anything else that you want to cover?
No, I think we hit a lot.
Perfect. All right, folks. See you soon. Bye-bye.